The Message, the 49th episode of Steven Universe, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Getting back to those older episode reviews, here we have not Message Received, but The Message, the original Message episode, in which, while coincidentally discussing Lapis Lazuli, the Gems receive a signal on the Wailing Stone, which, with Greg's help, they eventually determine is a video message from Lapis Lazuli back on Homeworld warning them that Homeworld is coming to Earth. She goes on to warn them that Homeworld's technology has advanced far further than she ever expected it to at this point, and that the Gems shouldn't fight because there is nothing on Earth that can stand up to this. Very, very simple episode premise, but to be fair, very, very simple episode premises are what Steven Universe is known for, and this is definitely one of the better simple episodes. Part of me wants to call this episode a filler episode because we'd already kind of figured out at this point that Homeworld was coming. The events of the next 3 episodes could have come without this one having ever happened, and I still feel like all the actions of all the characters would have worked in context. But I still really enjoy this episode. It's not like top 10 great or anything, but I really, really enjoy it. First of all, Greg is utilized in this episode. He seems to be utilized in pretty much every episode where Lapis Lazuli plays a big part, except for Same Old World, I guess. And I guess she plays a pretty big part in Jailbreak too, but I don't really count that one. Anyway, we get at the beginning an explanation that Greg has a real talent for audio. He's very good at the audio side of music. Now granted, he's really good at a lot of the other sides of music too, but that's where he really shines, is audio. And then the Gems just so happen to receive a signal through an audio receiving device, and they agree to allow Greg to try to help them. This is such an interesting episode because in a very subtle way, it touches on why Greg just doesn't stay with the Gems. And it's not because he doesn't like the Gems. It's not because he doesn't admire the Gems. In fact, he admires them a lot. It's because he doesn't feel like they like him or want him around. And you can see that that's true when the Gems decide that Greg can no longer help them after just one experiment. Even though it is Greg and Steven, very soon after this, who figure out how to display the signal. But I do love that once Greg is able to prove himself, Garnet, realizing that they've probably been kind of rude to him, shakes his hand showing appreciation for the help that he gave them, and I kind of feel like at this moment it ushers in a new level to the relationship between Greg and the other Gems. At this point they take him more seriously. From this point forward, they take him more seriously. I feel like in a lot of ways this episode is what House Guest could have been if it hadn't been about Greg lying to Steven, which I absolutely hate. I feel like the idea of Greg trying to prove his worth to the Gems and trying to spend more time with his son could have been easily rolled into one plot. Instead, we got 2 different episodes, and one was about average and one was quite good. So I guess everything worked out for the best. Still, I get a very similar vibe from this episode as I did from that one, and yet I like this episode infinitely more. I also like the very subtle way that Garnet's character is handled at the end of this episode. Garnet has precognitive abilities. Regardless of how you interpret her future vision, she does have future vision in which she is able to see visions of possible futures. There is literally no way that when looking into the possible futures of herself and the other Gems that she didn't see the possibility of Homeworld coming to Earth. And yet we have seen in various instances of episodes dealing with Homeworld Gems up to this point that Garnet has been very blatantly in denial of the possibility of those events. She has been hoping beyond hope that this didn't happen, that this future never came to pass. Now she is presented with a situation where she has to not only admit the possibility, but admit that it is happening, and she does. She accepts it, proving that while all of her recent actions may not have been ideal for a leader, she's still an effective leader, and that despite the hopelessness of this situation, she's not going to panic. Overall, this is an episode that I feel like we could have done without if the structure of the story had been handled differently, but one that I'm still glad that we got. I feel like this episode is overlooked a lot because it is only 2 episodes later that Homeworld actually arrives. But if you're someone who looks back on this episode and thinks, oh hey, that wasn't a very exciting episode, I should probably just overlook that one, maybe give it another watch. Watch out for subtle things, minute details, facial expressions. This episode just might surprise you. That said, guys, what did you think of this episode? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.
Whoa, hold the phone.
Now give the phone to me.